Hello, YouTube world. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about the life lessons that I've learned from Formula One. And as a Formula One fan, I feel like the sport has a lot of relativeness to like our everyday life. And there's sort of like a lot of things that we could just like learn from just like watching the sport and just like analyzing how they make their own decisions, how they make like the race strategies and like everything else, even how the sport is designed. It has like a lot of lessons that I would say they're sort of like life lessons if you look at them from like a different angle. So yeah, let me know what you think about the lessons that I'm going to share, or if you have your own views, or like if you have learned some life lessons yourself from watching Formula One. Let's chit chat about it in the comment section. And yeah, let's get into the video. So the first lesson I've learned from Formula One is that you can take advice from everyone. Like you can take advice from everyone because during the race, the driver only speaks to two key people. And during the race, I would say is the most crucial time for the driver because that's the time where sort of like all his skills are tested. It's sort of like the time where he's chasing his goals. It's the time where he's chasing his dreams. It's the time where he want to prove that he's actually able to perform in the sport. So during the race is the key important time as a Formula One driver. And during that time, he only speaks to two key people. He only speaks to the race engineer and the team principal. And the race engineer is literally the technical eye for the driver. He's the one that tells the driver if maybe rain is anticipated or like if there are gaps in front that could be maximized on. It's also the one who tells him if there's need to change like the race strategy or like if they need to change their tire strategy. I mean, because he can see the numbers, and when the driver is driving, definitely he can look at the analytics at the same time he's driving. So the race engineer then does that for him and look at the numbers, look at the analytics, and sort of like suggest what's best for the driver to do based on the numbers. So like this is a very important person for the driver. And as you can see, during the most important time of the driver, he only speaks to two people. Why? Because you can't listen to everyone and still persevere in whatever you're doing, because imagine during the race like how fans we tend to have like a lot of opinions, like we comment on everything. We want to be involved in like every step of like the driver's journey, like, oh, you should have gone with like soft towels. Oh, like the race is almost over, you should have gone for softs. Oh, I did choose hards, you should have gone like for medium towels. Like we just sort of to have like, we normally as fans have a lot of like unsolicited advice. And imagine if the driver would be listening to like all the advice that we give, like how confused would he have been during the race? But it's fun that in our own lives, we sort of like allow ourselves to take advice from everyone around us. Even the people that have no idea about our lives, we take advice from them. So I feel like we're not doing ourselves a favor by doing that, because we're literally misleading ourselves by just allowing a lot of people to give us advice, or we just like listen to them and like we take it to heart. And that's not a good thing for us, because I feel like in our lives we sort of like need to sort of like have that same formation in a way. Like you decide who are the key people in your life, if it's your parents, if it's your friends, if it's your siblings. And whenever you have to sort of like make a key important decision, you choose to only listen to those people. And if something makes sense to you and it makes sense to your key people, I think there is no reason why you should sort of like try to have that thing make sense to everyone else. So that's the first key lesson that I've learned from Formula One. And I think it's very important, because unsolicited advice can really mislead you, because people are just like, people, as I'm a human being as well. So like, I'm saying this from experience, like we as human beings, we have a lot of advice, and we have the kind of advice that even us ourselves have not tried, but we just like throw it on other people because they're like, we can talk. So like what, So I feel like, if you really want to do the best for yourself and like, just don't take advice from everyone. Just choose your key people and like let those be the people that you take advice from. And I feel like you're gonna save yourself like a lot of pressure and a lot of like mental stress by just doing that, because it's a very important thing. The second lesson I've learned from Formula One is that to be able to accomplish anything major in your life, you need a high level focus. And I say this because during the race, I feel like the drivers tend to have like laser focus, like laser focused focus. Does it make sense? Because like imagine these people drive at about 300 kilometers per hour. That is roughly 83 meters per second. So literally, they're driving the length of a football pitch in a second. Like, that's wild and that's very fast. So I feel like to be able to do that, you need to be able to be very, very focused because they're going through corners at a speed of like 200 kilometer per hour, like 250 kilometer per hour sometimes, and that's a corner. That means like just a tiny just a tiny moment where they lose focus, that could be a crash, and crashes are wild if you're driving at that speed. Like the crash could be deadly if you're driving at that speed. So like they really need like a high level focus. So what I've learned in that, like how that sort of like applies to our lives is that like if there's any goal that you're working towards or if there's anything that you really want it to sort of like succeed, you need to really, really focus on it. Because I feel like as human beings, we tend to sort of like do a lot of things mediocrely and sort of like expect extraordinary results out of it. And I feel like, if anything the sport is telling us is that that will never work. Like you can't put mediocre focus in something and expect that thing to give you extraordinary results. Like, nah, like you can drive at a speed of like 100 kilometer per hour when your fellows are driving at 300 kilometers per hour and still expect to be the race leader. No, it doesn't work like that. For you to be a race leader, you have to sort of like be extra focused and drive at above the speed that like a normal driver would drive. So like, yeah, I feel like that's sort of like the lesson that I've learned. If you want to go somewhere or if you want to do like something with like, if you have a project or you have anything like just that you're working towards, if you want it to get somewhere, you need to be like extra focused on that thing for that thing to even like bear results that you're sort of like looking forward to. And on that same note of like being focused on the things that you're doing, I think also it's also important to note that like just because you've been focused on that thing for like a week and it has not bared results, it does not mean that you have to give up. You should like keep on focusing on that thing again and again and again until you get where you want to be. Because like if you look at the drivers, like there are 20 drivers, yeah? And all the drivers, I would assume all the drivers give their best during the race. But there's just has to be one winner. And like all other 19 drivers have to live with the fact that they have given their best for this race and still they did not succeed. But still they have to be on the racetrack again the next Sunday and still give their best. And I feel like if these people can do this all year round, why can't you do that for yourself, for your own life, for the things that you sort of like want to work on? And I feel like we can do that for ourselves too. I don't know, but for me, I feel like it's making a lot of sense. Like, if you want extraordinary results on a project, if you want extraordinary results on something that you're working on, you need to be like laser focused on that thing and not just for like a week or a month. You need to be laser focused on that thing again and again and again until hopefully you get to where you want to be. Or if you change your mind, that is also okay. You can choose change your mind, focus on something else. But the point is, you cannot give mediocre effort on something and expect extraordinary results out of it. It does not work like that. The third lesson I've learned from Formula One is that life is not fair. And that's just the fact. You just have to live with it. Like life is not fair. And that's just the fact. I mean, I feel like the sooner you make peace with this, the easier life is going to be because life is not fair and that's just a fact. And I feel like with the sport, you can see this in a lot of areas. Like sometimes they're very good drivers that don't get the best seats because they don't come from wealthy families. And that's very common in Formula One because it's a money sport. So that just shows like how much life is not fair and you just have to live with it. For instance, in the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, like Lewis Hamilton did his best. Like he did everything he could to win the race. Even by statistics, he was the best driver for the day. Like he did everything that took to sort of like win the race. But then an incident happens a few minutes before the race ends, and then Max goes and changed the tires, which is still in discussion if that was legal or not. And then he comes on and takes off the win away from Lewis with like some fresh towels, like a few minutes before the race ends. Like, I mean, if that does not tell you like life is not fair and that's just the fact, like sometimes there are things that happens that they are very much outside your control and you really cannot like reason them, but then they happen and they probably don't work in your best interest, but those things will just happen because life is just like that. Like not everything would happen sort of like favor you, at least not every time. So I feel like the more we sort of like accept these things are meant to happen or these things will happen at some point, it just makes you sort of like a bit more chilled when sort of when it happens, because it can be like a lot of stress knowing that you are the best driver but still this thing was taken away from you with reasons that were outside your reasoning and with reasons that you're not even sure if they were like, were they okay, were they illegal, or was this thing sort of like planned, so it's a lot of things that sort of like happen in our lives that are similar to those situations. And I feel like we just need sort of like accept that sometimes life is not fair and we just have to live with that fact. The fourth lesson I've learned from Formula One is that to get further in life, you must take care of yourself. Like maintenance is key. I mean, no matter how many important projects you have going, no matter how hard your job is, no matter like how much you think like you have a lot of work to do, you must take care of yourself. Maintenance is important. I mean, I feel like that's the fourth lesson that I've learned from Formula One, because you see like how the race is timed and like the driver that can move the fastest is the one that wins and all of that. But still, even with that much time constraints, even in a place where a second has a lot of weight, they still make time to sort of like maintain the cars, because in a typical race a car could stop from 1 to 3 pit stops to sort of like maintain the car performance, change the tires, do this and this and this. And it's all those pit stops that sort of like help the car maintain its performance until the end of the race. So if a race car that is very much time constrained, they still make time for maintenance. Imagine, why don't we? Like, we need to make time for maintenance, because from this perspective, you can see that maintenance is the thing that sort of like fuels you. Maintenance is the thing that will sort of like give you energy to get back in the fields and like keep on working on wherever you're working. Because I know there's a tendency for some people that whenever they have like major projects, they sort of like neglect everything else in their lives and just focus on the work. But I feel like if you need to get the most out of the things that you're working on, you need to slot some time for maintenance, because refreshing yourself up, like maintaining yourself, your mental state, your physical, your health. That is everything that will sort of like fuel you and sort of like ensure that you have enough energy to sort of like work on the projects that you're working on. Because we have seen a number of cases where lack of maintenance have actually made people lose race wins. For instance, like in the recent race, we had seen how George Russell had the race winner title taken away from him because his car was underweight. And why was the car underweight? The car was underweight because he did not stop for a pit stop at all. So like his car wore out beyond what the FIA sort of accepts, and he was just like robbed of the race winner thing. But if he had just stopped sort of like taking care of the car, like that would have been like a touch different story. And I feel like that's the same in life. Like it's like not taking care of yourself is an equivalence of sort of like working on something all your life so hard to sort of like get the end of it where you have probably attained what you're working for, but then you're so worn out, you're so drained that you can't even enjoy the thing that you're working to have. So yes, you're gonna get it, but then you're not gonna be having the energy to enjoy your earnings. So like, what's the point? The best strategy is sort of like ensure that you're maintaining yourself throughout your life, throughout the things that you're working on. Like, yes, work can be crazy and all of that, but it's important to sort of like slot in times for maintenance and like have your own pit stops in a way, so that when you get to the end of it, when you sort of like attain the things that you wanted to attain, like the project success or anything, you still have the energy to sort of like enjoy your earnings because you are able to get enough rest during the work that you're doing and all of that jump. I'm very curious to hear from you guys if you have sort of like learned and of like lessons from the sport that you think they're sort of like life lessons that we could all sort of like implement in our lives, or like in any other way, or like if you have any perspective about the sport that you could share with us, that would be lovely to sort of like share those things with us in the comments below. And until next time, that's it for this video. Adios.